Hey bro, you gotta hurry up and finish that vid, bro. Bro, chill. I don't see why you're in such a big time rush. Hey everyone, it's me, MattCMG, and in our journey through all the Nick-coms, I've mostly focused on Dan the Cheek Divider Schneider shows, but there's one show in particular that wasn't made by him that was lumped in with him anyways due to its popularity, and that show is none other than 2009's Big Time Rush. Dan Schneider kind of had a monopoly on Nickelodeon shows at the time, but Big Time Rush came in to say, hey, fuck you. In case you haven't seen it, the show follows four best friends from Minnesota who start a boy band and slowly rise to stardom. The band itself, consisting of Kendall Schmidt, James Maslow, Carlos Penavega, and Logan Henderson, was made specifically for the show, but they were ultimately a real band who released music, went on tours, etc. The show's creator, Scott Fellows, also known for Ned's Declassified, took inspiration from an old show called The Monkees, a show with a similar premise about the fictional lives of a real-life band, where the band members would play fictional versions of themselves. With a show about a boy band, you'd kind of expect the target audience to be girls, and it was, but the show also had a sizable male audience. And I think it's clear to see why. Girls wanted to be with BTR, boys wanted to be BTR. And while the former is pretty obvious, the latter is a result of how the show made the guys' lives of fame and adventure seem fun, along with a surprising amount of bro humor and plot lines that mostly young boys could relate to. You know, I was always more of like a hip-hop kid at the time, and I was listening to fucking Eminem and yeah, that's about it, but even I thought these dudes were cool back in the day, right? It's okay, guys, it's fine. I listen to Kanye and Kendrick Lamar now. It's totally fine. I'm not a fucking loser. While the show made the lives of the band seem pretty damn awesome, with luxurious apartments and world tours, BTR also shows us a glimpse into the darker side of fame, which is what we will be talking about today. If it's one thing that I really appreciated about this show in my recent rewatch, was that BTR the band gets progressively more famous as the show goes on. And while not every episode directly addresses it, there are many episodes where the plot is directly tied to the band's in-universe popularity, and these episodes remain constantly present as the series progresses. These premises are pretty basic at the start, with plot lines revolving around simple photo shoots or music videos or what have you, with the end of season 1 being the guys' first concert. There's a pattern here where BTR will go on tour off-screen between seasons, with the next season having them being more famous than they were before, which opens the door for further shenanigans. What we're gonna do in this video is go through each episode that has a premise like this and discuss what the show accurately and inaccurately depicts about the entertainment industry, fame, and the ramifications of it. And for future reference, whenever I refer to the four band members throughout this video, I'm referring to the characters on the show, not the actors themselves. Just to make that clear. So let's get weird, let's get wild, and let's get right into how Big Time Rush shows us that fame isn't all it's cracked up to be. BTS? Nah, fuck y'all. BTR is where it's at, motherfucker. Let's go! Let's fucking go! Starting with season 1, there are only a few standout instances of this kind of thing. The pilot episode, Big Time Audition, shows us how the boys get discovered by Gustavo in the first place, and how they go from regular guys to boy band. While I'm fairly certain that they don't hold auditions like this to find new rising music stars, if anything they probably do that over the internet these days, but the rest of this episode is pretty accurate. Many, though that's not to say all, but many popular artists like this aren't as talented as the media makes them out to be, but rather their talent is exaggerated for the sake of their public image. In BTR, the only one of the group who has any real talent at first is James and arguably Kendall. Gustavo even says as much at the end of the episode.
You can't sing! You can't sing or dance!
I can backflip. Yeah, but that backflip though.
The only reason he chose Kendall was because he had the attitude of a rock star, not necessarily the talent of one. The talent doesn't matter to these big producers as much as the artist's marketability does. Because you can always make somebody sound talented with editing, except for me, because I'm fucking shit. Gustavo puts the guys under boy band boot camp, where he harshly trains them to be able to sing, dance, and all that kind of stuff. This is actually pretty accurate to a lot of the training real-life pop stars go through in real life, except a little bit more cartoonified, because that show is basically a live-action cartoon. For instance, all 3 members of Destiny's Child would be forced to run miles while singing in order to increase their lung capacities. However, some of the ways these pop stars are treated by these producers can unfortunately be pretty abusive, with some notable examples being the group Fifth Harmony claiming to have been, quote, treated like slaves, or the numerous amounts of K-pop idols being worked to the bone to the point where it negatively affects their health. In real life, stars are not discovered, they're created, and in a very predatory manner at that, where they will sell you this dream of living the life when they end up working you to death. This is less so the case nowadays with the internet, because now anybody can find success independently, but these big record companies are known to go out and try to create the next big star, and they do so through very predatory means. This transitions quite well into the next big episode that deals with this kind of thing, Season 1, Episode 5, Big Time Bad Boy. In this episode, the CEO of the record company, Griffin, thinks that BTR needs to have a bad boy in the group to be more marketable. The plot of the episode has Griffin trying to force Kendall into being the bad boy, but when he refuses because he doesn't want to be dishonest with who he is, they try to replace him with a phony rapper. In real life, this is more or less what would happen. If an artist or a member of a band doesn't do what the record company asks, then they will quickly replace them with somebody who will listen, especially if that group is not like a homegrown kind of thing. Even if that weren't the case, there are countless examples of an artist going bad as a PR stunt. There's a reason that the whole good girl gone bad trope is so prevalent in the music industry, and it's because it sells. Like, I don't think anybody would care about Miley Cyrus or a lot of other former child stars if they didn't go bad at some point to prove that they aren't kids anymore and that they can be taken just as seriously as adults. On the male side of things though, the bad boy trope serves the same purpose and sells just as well. There are tons of songs about good girls wanting bad guys, hence why the bad boy is so marketable. This also leads into the idea of industry plants, which is essentially what Kendall is fighting against in the episode. An industry plant is an artist who has backing from these big record companies but are marketed as self-made, which as you can tell is pretty disingenuous. In this episode, Wayne is kind of an industry plant where he had a failed career in one area, so they try to repurpose him for another. A real life and somewhat recent example of this are the Tramp Stamps, a pop punk girl group who marketed themselves as this underground, homegrown girl boss type thing, but are really just three failed pop stars that their label put together and tried to market as a new thing. And might I say, they did a pretty fucking bad job at it, because not only is their marketing so clearly artificial, but their music isn't even fucking good.
I can't remember the last time.
Oh, this is mixed. Bro, this sounds like something I would make in an afternoon. Oh my god, this is terrible. It's mixed horribly.
Man, not asking for a blowjob.
He's trying to be really edgy. They're really trying to be edgy right now. Oh my god, that's awful. There is no... Yeah, Chris is right. There's no flow. What? Oh! You're really gonna do me dirty like this. They're really gonna do me dirty like this.
Other examples of industry planting show up here and there in some other episodes, albeit to a lesser degree, but they oftentimes involve Griffin trying to fundamentally change BTR, while the band fight back in an attempt to preserve their own integrity as artists and as friends. In the show, BTR always wins out in the end, but in real life that's not always the case, as marketability is usually all that matters to big record companies, and they'll do whatever they need to make sure that their band makes money, which includes forcing people to do things that they might not want to do, and to be things that they might not want to be for the sake of their image. Aside from basic stuff like needing to keep getting jobs to stay in Hollywood or concerts or whatever, that's all the major stuff from season 1, but it gets a lot crazier from here. Moving on to season 2, the first example of realism is in the second episode of the season, Big Time Fans. The main plot of the episode is a pretty typical trying to get signed type thing, but what I want to focus on here is the subplot of the episode. The subplot has James befriending a young fan who slowly becomes a stalker and tries to kidnap and replace him. If you've seen my iCarly video, then you should probably be pretty familiar with the idea of Crazed Fans. We talked about that at length in that video, so the short version is that if you have a following of any kind, you've got to be cautious when interacting with fans. There's a certain distance you've got to keep with your fans, you can't get too close to them or else things get a little bit weird. Obviously, it's rare to have a crazed fan try to kidnap and replace you, but some stalkers go a little bit off the deep end occasionally, i.e. the Bjork stalker. Hey yo, parasocial relationship gang, rise the fuck up. I don't know what the fuck was this? And anyways, when you're done with this, go watch my iCarly video. I pointed in the right corner, I think. It's one of these corners. It's in one of those corners. Go watch my iCarly video. You fucking stupid cunt. Interacting with fans is one thing, but interacting with the general public is a completely different story. Famous people gotta keep up appearances, and unfortunately this tends to bleed into their personal relationships. This is best seen in the episode Big Time Sneakers, where Kendall and Joe need to keep their relationship secret while the public believes that Joe is dating her co-star Jet. In the episode, we see how Kendall and Joe's attempts to date in public pisses off their publicists, who are weary of potential PR disasters affecting their ratings. Gustavo, on the other hand, is all for it because that drama would be free PR for BTR. See, I did a little bit of a fucking... What is that even? What's an anagram? Is that what that is? I'm fucking doing the splits by accident here. Oh, fuck. Oh, ow, 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 my balls. Ow, ow, fuck. I'm keeping that in. They try to weaponize the drama that was never really there in the first place. This episode shows us an oversimplified glimpse into how public figures can't really have public relationships. Don't get it twisted, while there are definitely real celebrity couples who actually fucking like each other and shit, it shouldn't be a shock to know that some of them are just for PR. Some of these public relationships aren't actually real, and these people actually have private relationships with non-famous people. Private relationships that we never see because they don't want us to see them. There's a reason why a lot of co-stars end up dating each other only to break up when their show or movie is over. It's because it was never really real in the first place, and they only did it to sell the movie. The Twilight movies are a good example of this. Those movies are fucking shit, but they got a banger soundtrack. They got fucking Decode by Paramore. Fuck yes, let's go. That shit fucking slaps harder than my fucking cock on a Tuesday night. I don't know what that even means. Moving on though, regardless of how public or private a famous person's relationship is, the real relationships in show business are never easy. With everybody constantly working on different projects, some of which may involve being away from each other for an extended period of time, these kinds of relationships aren't easy to maintain. I think you all know where I'm going with this one, but the episode Big Time Breakup details exactly this. Spoilers for a 10-year-old show, in this episode, Jo gets a movie deal that will force her to be in New Zealand for 3 years, which also means that she won't be able to be with Kendall for 3 years. Jo has to decide whether she wants to take such a big opportunity for her acting career or stay in LA to keep her relationship. Of course, if you've seen the episode, you know what her answer is, but regardless, these are the kinds of things that make dating as a famous person pretty difficult, because your career tends to be in opposition to your love life. Might I just say, this episode has one of the best fucking songs in it, worldwide. An absolute banger, absolute fucking boner jam. And you know, I guess this is slightly off topic, but this whole episode is just extremely mature with the way they handle this whole thing, which you wouldn't really expect of a show like this with all of its fucking slapstick and bro humor. Kudos to that people who wrote that episode. However, what isn't mature is the episode Big Time Girl Group, where BTR are afraid that a new girl group that Gustavo is producing for will replace them. Now this is actually an instance of the show getting something wrong, and what it gets wrong is the idea that record labels can't sign multiple artists at the same time, when this is actually an extremely fucking common thing. Like, that's actually kind of the entire point of a record label, which is to sign multiple artists at the same time and make them all famous to maximize profits. I literally could not find a single example of one artist being sidelined for a different artist within their label this way. The closest thing I could find was when the Backstreet Boys were sidelined to focus on Nick Carter's solo career, but that's more of a breakout star thing than it is an artist replacing another artist. So if this episode were more realistic, the guys wouldn't really have anything to worry about. Moving on to season 3, there's only one relevant episode here, that being the third episode, Bel Air Rush. In this episode, BTR's heightened fame causes a lot of problems with the paparazzi, so the guys move out to Bel Air, which if you somehow don't know is a gated community where the excessively rich and famous live. Obviously, Bel Air isn't the only gated community out there, but when you reach a certain level of fame, it almost becomes necessary to live in these private neighborhoods. This is, of course, to prevent paparazzis and stalkers from disturbing you, which, as you could probably guess, is pretty frequent once you pass a certain, fame threshold. This episode is apparently considered a crossover with Fresh Prince because Alfonso Ribeiro's in it, even though he's not playing Carlton in the episode. He plays a completely different character. Obviously that's part of the homage, but that's not a crossover. Whatever, bro, I'm still gonna do the fucking... That's not how you do it. You guys can tell I'm white. Tell me you're white without telling me you're white. Something else that I found interesting about this episode is that once BTR moves into Bel Air, the whole plot of the episode revolves around them trying to move back out. Except, they can't do that. The reason given in the episode is that the Bel Air residents have a cult-like mentality to them, but I think this is actually a metaphor for what happens when you actually do get rich or famous enough to move into one of these communities. Once you enter that life, once you attain that level of fame, you can't really leave it even if you wanted to. You can't be Bruno Mars or Ariana Grande or Kanye West or some shit and just decide one day, I don't feel like being famous anymore, and then just go back to living a normal life. No, that's just not possible. And that's one of the unseen curses of fame that makes it something that isn't really for everybody. If you're in it, you gotta be in it for the whole fucking ride. In a similar vein, the season 4 episode Big Time Invasion has the band doing whatever it takes to keep BTR at the top at a time where all of these British boy bands were making waves in the States. This is a similar premise to an episode we talked about earlier, where the guys are afraid that a new group is gonna come through to steal their thunder. Except this time it's done in a more realistic and way that actually makes fucking sense. Things like this are actually extremely common, not just with musical artists, but with marketing in general. It is extremely hard to break into a niche that is already filled. For an example that's pretty similar to the subject matter, you know how many boy bands were around in the 90s? A lot. A lot of boy bands in the 90s. You know how many boy bands from the 90s people actually remember? like two. There are plenty of musical artists, actors, even YouTubers who were plenty talented but never made as big of a splash as they could have because their brand was too similar to something else that was around at the time. You know, I'll talk about this from a YouTuber's perspective because that's kind of my realm of expertise, but I can guarantee you that there were a lot of unique and interesting Minecraft YouTubers who never got the chance to shine because Dream happened to blow up when he did. There was a joke there, and the joke was that there are no unique or interesting Minecraft YouTubers. Fuck you. In terms of music, artists like Cupcake and Lizzo are extremely similar. They are both these sexually open, plus-sized black women, but one is more popular than the other because their brands are too similar. Of course, these similarities can be used to their benefit, like with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion collabing and boosting each other's fan bases, but this isn't always the case. In the case of BTR, they didn't want a new boy band coming in and taking all of their fans away from them, hence their goal of the episode, which is to find a new manager to help them market themselves better. This actually kind of ties into the whole like boy band debate, like the whole NSYNC versus Backstreet Boys, which is better debate, which I think is what BTR is probably trying to avoid or get on top of in this episode. And unfortunately, when doing things for PR, you might just run into some scandals. The next episode, Big Time Scandal, is an example of when celebrities get into, well, scandals. In this episode, Kendall gets swifted. That is to say, his ex-girlfriend Lucy releases a breakup song that is very clearly about him, so he's afraid that if the public finds out that it really is about him, that it'll ruin his career and thereby the careers of BTR. Alongside this, Carlos and Logan are accused of assaulting and robbing an old lady, which they then need to face the ramifications of. This episode deals heavily with public relations, especially the disparity between what really happened and what the public thinks happened, and how easily the narrative can be altered. We know from previous episodes that Kendall and Lucy broke up mutually. In fact, I don't think you could even really qualify them as together in the first place because all they did was kiss on an elevator, but the point remains that their breakup song was definitely about Kendall, and he even points out how exaggerated and inaccurate the song actually is. Lucy doesn't even hate Kendall for what happened, so it kind of also goes to show how artists will intentionally exaggerate situations to be more appealing to the public. Luckily for Kendall, Lucy doesn't tell the press that the song was about him, but things don't always go as smoothly, as there have been many breakup songs over the years that have ruined or at least harmed the careers of the people they were about. Some examples of this include Katy Perry's Part of Me supposedly being about Russell Brand, Justin Timberlake's Cry Me a River supposedly being about Britney Spears, and Ariana Grande's Thank You Next being about several of her exes. The effects of these songs on the target's careers varies depending on the person, but negative stigmas are definitely attached to these people by some fans. This was the exact thing that Kendall feared in the BTR episode, and he got out lucky, but it's not always the case. As for Carlos and Logan, they face a similar situation where they are accused of attacking an elderly woman, when in reality they were trying to help her, but the surveillance video didn't really look that way. Obviously, the surveillance footage looked a little bit sus, a little bit of a mogus one, but the media didn't care what the real story was, they only cared about what would get them the best ratings. The way they tried to escape this bad press was by faking acts of kindness to make themselves look better, which is surprisingly a pretty common practice even today. YouTuber apologies, anyone? Eventually more footage comes out that clears their names, and while this does tend to happen in real life, most of the time this exonerating evidence is disregarded by the general public. This is often seen in these cancel culture type situations. For example, the recent allegations against Dan from Game Grumps supposedly grooming underage fans being proven false, but even with that evidence, he's still getting shit for it. Unfortunately, not everyone in this kind of situation is as lucky as BTR was. The last major episode that has to do with fame is the penultimate episode of the series, Big Time Breakout. In this episode, Griffin tells BTR about the pattern of boy bands breaking up after their third album, with only one member being able to make it solo. He must have been referring to fictional boy bands or something, because this trend isn't actually true in real life. All of the biggest boy bands out there, like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, all had more than 3 albums, not including like greatest hits or compilations albums. And while boy bands do break up, there's not really a trend of only one of them getting famous. The only actual example of this is how Justin Timberlake had a successful solo career after NSYNC, but this isn't the case for other boy bands. For a recent example, One Direction broke up a while ago, and I'm pretty sure that all of the members have their own solo careers and are quite successful in that. I cannot actually tell you for sure because I don't actually know. I may be a straight dude who listens to boy bands, but I draw the fucking line at One Direction a little bit too effeminate for me. That's just me. Maybe I'm fucking homophobic. I don't know. Even so, the idea of the breakout star is a tale as old as bands themselves. No matter what kind of musical group you have, there will typically always be one member who's liked by the public or by the label better than the rest of the group. The most marketable member is usually the one that's able to go solo. You know, take a look at D12. Everybody knows Eminem's solo stuff, but nobody knows fucking Bizarre or the Conniva. You know, nobody cares about the other members of Brockhampton. They only care about Kevin Abstract. Fucking Jackson 5 might as well call it Michael Jackson or the other guys. I think you all get my point. When it comes to groups, labels are always looking for the next big solo star. The goal of a label is typically profits and longevity first, with little regard to the creative process and feelings of the group as a whole. And finally, we have the final episode of the series, Big Time Dreams. Now, the plot of the episode isn't all that deep, as it's mostly about the guys wanting to win an award show with some spy antics thrown in there. But what I think is kind of deep, you know, as far as Nickelodeon shows go, is the main message of the episode and thereby the entire series. This has to do with the whole fame thing, so bear with me. At the end of the episode, when BTR are performing their song We Are, the guys ask Kendall what his dreams were, and he replies,
Except for you, Dreamless, you never told us your dream.
This is it. Look where we are. We're all up here together. That's my dream. And we made it come true.
The only member of the group who actually wanted this life from the start was James, while the rest of them all had other goals. Kendall only pursued the whole music thing because he wanted to be with his friends. The fame was just an afterthought to him, because at the end of the day, what's all the fame and fortune if you don't have friends to share it with? Following your dreams has always been a big theme of BTR the show, but also the band itself. When they weren't singing about girls or partying, they were usually singing about their journey to become famous or dealing with that fame. Songs like Halfway There, Famous, the aforementioned We Are, the show's titular theme song Big Time Rush, and plenty more are all about following your dreams, about striving for greatness and fame. Even after all the negative aspects of fame that we've discussed today, I think it's still safe to say that everybody kind of wants fame to some degree, but in order to do that, you need to start with a dream. And you know, maybe that dream is kind of far-fetched and it's kind of fucking out there, but you won't know until you try. But on that inspirational note, that's all I have for this video today, guys. So leave a like if you enjoyed it. In the comments down below, let me know what you guys think of BTR's take on fame in the music industry. Let me know if I missed anything or if I got anything wrong. Subscribe to this channel for more Nickelodeon videos, or if you just like my dumbass face, and consider pledging to my Patreon to support the channel and my creative endeavors. I've been MattCMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Oh. Make it count, play it straight. Don't look back, don't hesitate when you go big time. What you want, what you feel, never quit. Make it real when you roll big time. Hey, hey, listen to your heart now. Hey, hey, don't you feel the rush? Hey, hey, better take your shot now. Oh, 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 oh. Go and shake it up, what you gotta lose. Go and make your luck with the life you choose. If you want it all, lay it on the line. It's the only life you got, so you gotta live it big time.